Okay, so let's keep talking about David Foster Wallace. Um, so he was talking about the words that we use for animals. I'm in a footnote at the bottom of page 3. Um, he says, is this evidence of some kind of deep unease about eating higher animals that is endemic, meaning it's sort of deep in there, enough to show up in English usage, but that the unease diminishes as we move out of the mammalian order, meaning we don't need those special words when we're not talking about mammals anymore, right? When we're talking about things that aren't mammals, they're far away from us in the evolutionary ladder, we can just say lobster, fish, and chicken. But when it gets close to mammals, when we're talking about mammals like cows and pigs, we change the language. He says, is the lamb counterexample sinks the whole theory, or are there special biblico-historical reasons for that equivalence? Because he does admit there's a, remember I told you guys consider both sides, consider objections. He does point out, because he was saying, he has a theory here, which is that if it's not a mammal, lobster, fish, and chicken, we use the same word for the animal as the meat. But when it is a mammal, like cows and pigs, we change it when it's meat to beef and pork. But he does admit that lamb is a sort of counterexample, because a lamb is called a lamb when you eat it, and it's also called a lamb when it's an animal. So that does see, and lambs are mammals. So he says, well, maybe this theory doesn't really work because the whole lamb thing is an exception to his idea. But then he says, well, maybe it's got a biblical reason. I wonder why it's like that. And then he just kind of drops it. So we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that. I just want to point out quickly the way David Foster Wallace's brain works. He thinks of a theory. Hey, isn't it interesting that when something is a mammal, like cows and pigs, we change the word for the meat, but that when something is not a mammal, like lobster, fish, and chicken, the word for the meat is the exact same as the word for the meat is the same as the animal. But then he thinks, what would someone that objected to me say? Well, they would say, hey, David Foster Wallace, your theory isn't true. We call the animal is called a lamb, and the meat is also called a lamb. And he says, oh, I guess that, thinking about that, maybe that does disprove my theory. Although I wonder if there's like a reason in the Bible, because lambs are such an important animal in the Bible because they're sacrificed and they have this whole special history, biblical history. And he goes, I wonder if there's a reason for that. I just want you to notice the way his brain works. He's a brilliant man. He's really one of my very favorite writers of all time. I kind of wish that wasn't true. I wish I didn't like him as much as I did. I wish I didn't like David Foster Wallace as much as I do, because he's kind of not the best person. But I really like his writing. So but I want you to notice he has a theory. He has examples of his theory, and then he notices, oh, here's an example that actually doesn't fit my theory. But he tells you about it. The thing that disproves his point, he tells you, because he's like, but I wonder if there's a reason for that. And he kind of indicates you could do more research on that. So I think it's a habit you guys should think about in your essays, is to put the ideas in, and then to be like, some people might object. They might say, hey, David Foster Wallace, you're wrong. Lambs are mammals, and we use the same word when they're an animal as when they're meat, so maybe this is not true. And then he thinks about it. What would he say to them? Well, he would say, well, maybe there's like a biblical reason for it. It's interesting. I just want you to notice that that's how his brain works. So I want your brains working a little bit like that. Okay, so let's see if we can kind of continue on here. So he says, the intimacy of the whole thing is maximized at home, which of course is where most lobsters get prepared and eaten. Because he says it's one thing that restaurants don't show you cows and pigs being killed. Now, the lobster festival shows you lobsters being killed, but you're not the one killing them. But a lot of lobsters are cooked at home, in which case you are the one killing them. And that's unusual. Most people don't kill their own steak. Most people don't kill cows and then eat them. Most people don't kill pigs and eat them. Most people just go buy them after they're already killed. But lobsters are different, and that puts. He likes the lobster thing because lobsters are one of the only animals that people kill in their home before eating. And on the one hand, that makes it unusual. On the other hand, though, it forces you to notice, oh shit, I'm killing this living creature in order to eat it. Well, that's true for all your meat. So if you feel uncomfortable killing the lobster in your home, why do you feel comfortable letting someone else kill it for you and then buying it at the store? Okay. He says, although note already the semi-conscious euphemism prepared, because he said it right here. He said, the intimacy of the whole thing is maximized at home, meaning the intimacy of you're doing your own killing. It's really a big deal at home, which of course is where most lobsters get prepared and eaten. See where he says prepared? And then he notices he said prepared. Although note the semi-conscious euphemism. Euphemism is like a nice way of saying thing. Prepared, which in the case of lobsters really means killing them right there in their kitchens. So his point is that people don't like to think about this. But even he doesn't like to think about it because he just said lobsters are prepared and eaten in your kitchen. But what does prepared mean? It's a nice way of saying murdered. It's a nice way of saying killed. And he doesn't want to think about it, and so he changes the word from killed to prepared. It's because that's what he does. He's a semi-conscious. He didn't even notice himself doing that. He was like, oh, lobsters are being prepared in your kitchen. Prepared means killed. It's just that killed makes you think thoughts you don't want to think, and prepared helps to hide those thoughts from you. And David Foster Wallace wants people to notice what they are doing and really think about them, just like Socrates does. Okay. God, I love Socrates. I miss Socrates already. He says the basic scenario is that we come from the store and make our little preparations, like getting the kettle filled and boiling. Then we lift the lobsters out of the bag or whatever retail container they came home in. Whereupon some uncomfortable things start to happen. However stuporous means like sleepy. However stuporous a lobster is from the trip home, for example, it tends to come alarmingly to life when placed in boiling water, meaning it may not be moving a lot when you grab it out of the bag, but once you try to put it in boiling water, it starts fighting you. If you're tilting it from a container into the steaming kettle, the lobster will sometimes try to cling to the container's sides, the container of boiling water, or even to hook its claws over the kettle's rim like a person trying to keep from going over the edge of the roof. And worse is when the lobster is fully immersed. Even if you cover the kettle and turn away, you can usually hear the cover rattling and clanking as the lobster tries to push it off, or the creature's claws scraping the side of the kettle as it thrashes around. The lobster, in other words, behaves very much like you or I would behave. He says the lobster behaves very much like you and I would behave if we were plunged into boiling water, with the obvious exception of screaming, because you would scream, but the lobsters don't scream. So he points out that when you bring a lobster home, the lobster, when dropped into boiling water, it claws the sides. It doesn't want to go in there. It tries to, you can hear the claws scraping around in there. You can hear it's trying to get the lid off. It acts like a person would act if they were drowning. And that is an uncomfortable thing to think about, because when you look at a lobster, you think, this is a creature that is not like me. But when you see how it acts, when you put it in boiling water, it kind of acts a lot like you. And that's disturbing to think about, because you wouldn't hurt another human being this way. But if the lobster is similar to a human being, why are you hurting it? Again, this is an uncomfortable topic. By the way, some of the English professors are mad that everyone's expected to teach this because it's so uncomfortable, and they're like, COVID, and it's a terrible time in American history, and now we're giving students these uncomfortable readings. But I always like to give people uncomfortable readings. I think it's fun to make you think about shit. David Foster Wallace has another footnote. It's not super important, but I'm going to read it anyway because I want to see what it says. He says, there's a relevant populist myth about the high-pitched whistling sound that sometimes issues from a pot of boiling lobster. The sound is really vented steam from the layer of seawater between the lobster's flesh and its carapace. That's the shell. This is why shedders whistle more than hardshells, but the pop version has it that the sound is the lobster's rabbit-like death scream. Lobsters communicate via pheromones in their urine and don't have anything close to vocal equipment for screaming, but the myth's very persistent, which might once again point to a low-level cultural unease about boiling the thing. So he just points out that he was just saying lobsters are just like you and I, except they don't scream. And then he points out that some people think they scream, because when you boil a lobster alive, there is a kind of whistling noise, and people say that it's the lobster screaming. It's not. It's steam coming from out of the shell. But he says, I think this myth about the screaming lobster sticks around. Why? Because you know you're killing something, and you expect it to scream, and so people imagine it's screaming. Oh, all right. Pick it up in the next video.